och välkommen till Med hopp om livet. Här sitter jag, Anna, tillsammans med Sofia Sivertsdotter, Spencer Reece och Ralph Savarese. Is that correct?
Yes.
Välkomna och welcome.
Thank you.
This episode will be in English, since I think it's easier for me to speak in English than for you to speak in Swedish, right?
Maybe. Yeah.
Perhaps.
I think it will be too much of a challenge for you to speak Swedish, so I'll try. I do my best to speak in English. We are going to talk about a creative life, creativity, a meaningful life, and your creative work. And might be a lot of other things too. But I'd like to start with you, Sofia, to introduce yourself.
Okay.
Who are you?
Who am I? Oh, why does
The short version?
Yeah. That question always comes up.
Yeah.
Who am I? I am a poet at heart, I think, I would say. I'm born on Öland and grew up on that little island in the southeast. And that has formed me a lot, I think. And now I work as an author. That's the very short answer.
Welcome. And Rolf, who are you? How would you introduce yourself to this conversation?
I am an English professor in the state of Iowa, which is in the northern middle part of the U.S. So I write literary criticism, nonfiction, memoir, poetry, done a lot of translations. What else? I think that's a good place to start.
Mm-hmm. And what about you, Spencer? How would you describe yourself?
I'm a Episcopal priest, which is part of the Anglican communion around the world. And that's how I'm often identified. And then in midlife, I also became a published poet. And right now, I'd say more than ever, these two different lives are intersecting, where I work and where I live, and in my 60s, more than ever, they're coming together.
And this is your first visit to Stockholm, right?
Yes.
Ralph and Spencer, yeah?
Yes.
So how come you made it to Stockholm?
Well, apparently, last year, for the first time, Ralph and I decided to do a writer's retreat. We'd never done it before, and I have not taught a lot in my life, but I was involved in this Anglican center that we made in Santiago, where I had worked in Madrid for 10 years. So I got in touch with Ralph, and we decided to do this workshop, and we ended up having 2 students. We were thinking like we weren't going to do it at all, but then we decided we would do it. And apparently during that time that we were there, where we met Sofia, I said that I would like to come to Stockholm, and now here we are. Yeah.
So we put the blame on you, Sofia.
Yeah. And I'm so happy you decided to run the course with just the 2 of us. It was amazing.
Yeah, that's true. And it was called Walk, Seek, Write. So what made it distinctive was that there was a big walking component. And in fact, one day we took a cab about 10 miles outside of Santiago and walked back because many people finished the Camino in Santiago at the cathedral. And so I think that was a really compelling part of talking about literature and writing in the morning and walking and then making meals together or having meals together. You don't often put all of those pieces together in one kind of communal activity.
Sounds like a dream to me.
It was. And it was so lovely now when you mention it to walk with these people the last part. They had been walking for weeks.
Yes.
And then we got to follow them the last hours.
Yes.
That was beautiful.
Also at the Casa Anglicana, many of them were staying there. So we also had some incredible breakfasts.
Yeah.
Hearing the stories of other souls, walking across this planet. It was really moving.
Would you say that you have something in common that you found out at this retreat in Spain?
The three of us?
Yeah.
Well, everything and nothing.
So let's start with nothing or everything.
Well, I don't know why I love you so much, but I do. You are amazing, and I just feel that you are so kind-hearted, beautiful being, so full of wisdom and knowledge and just, peace.
I think there's something about meeting strangers and using a kind of organized activity to both radically expedite and intensify what might happen. And a lot of it was just Spencer and I reuniting because we took our first creative writing class in college together 40 years ago.
Right. So we had not spent that much time together in 40 years. So it was kind of, I don't know, a bit of a risk, you could say. But I mean, it just worked out beautifully. And I think it was kind of, here's an English word that you might not hear all the time, but portentous, sort of like a harbinger of things to come, because I'm now being asked to do more things like this. But this was kind of the first thing I'd ever done, and it had such a sort of a odd beginning. We hadn't seen each other in 40 years. There were only 2 students. We were thinking we weren't going to do it at all because there weren't enough people. And then we did do it, and it was beautiful.
And we had
and it has led to more for me of this kind of thing.
We had that national blackout in Spain. So we also had the experience on one day of all of the restaurants, they were going to lose their food. So it was free food, there were drinks, everybody was out on the street because we still had some sunlight out there. And the communal sense, both like in this group, but also in Santiago, was amazing. There's something about a kind of calamity where people can step outside of their ordinary ways of,
So what would you say,
feeling.
Spencer? What is it that you share together, the three of you? Maybe you began and then you came along, but what is it that you share maybe in values or thinking or purpose? What's your common ground in this? Tricky question, maybe, but...
Well, I mean, at the core of my life is the fact that poetry saved my life. So, and then to do it at the center where we were walking, and also I think creativity, which is the topic of this podcast, is kind of central to me. And I'm preaching more about it in the church where I am in Rhode Island, that everybody can have access to creativity. You don't have to be a superstar or famous. Everybody can make something. And that when we do that, we find our autonomy. The Holy Spirit, I would say in my business, comes through you when you make something. And you can see it in people's faces. And that can happen in an orphan in Honduras. You can see it happen, and you can see it happen in England. But that is available to all of us. And we forget about it when we grow up and we get serious jobs, and we think that we can't. Many people I've encountered feel like they can't be creative, or they won't be. They'll resist it. They'll be argumentative with me. A lot of people, doctors and all kinds of people that I run across in the church, or they'll say, well, I exercise, but it's not that. It's tapping into part of being creative is you get to make decisions about what you're going to do or how it's going to look, and it doesn't have to be perfect. And I think that's available to all of us, and it is a key to some kind of happiness while we're on the planet.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
I just have to ask, how did poetry save your life? If you have any, example?
Well, how did it save my life?
Yeah.
I was a teenager in Minnesota, where there's a lot of Scandinavian people.
Oh, no.
So some of this feels very familiar to me. And this would be the 1970s. I had beautiful, amazing, eccentric parents, that might not come as a surprise, who were affected by a disease called alcoholism. And so there was kind of sadness in my house, but I didn't understand it. And then also my sexuality was different. But in the 1970s, there was no language for that. And the combination of these things led me to want to kill myself, to commit suicide, to just dig a hole in the ground and disappear. And I didn't know how to get out of it. I thought that was going to be it. So the poetry that I found from a Norwegian, a full-blooded Norwegian English teacher named Anne Young, when I was in this class when I was like 17, saved my life. And all the lights in the world went on. And I just started memorizing it. I couldn't. And then I went on to college where I met Ralph. And I just was obsessed with it. And it saved me. And
Did you write?
And the making of it came later.
Oh,
but
okay.
that was also, you know, the two great things about writing are the pleasure of making it. And also, others have said, this is not original to me, but the company you keep. And so through writing, to have a friend like Ralph and Sofia, that came out in that moment in Spain too, that it's a very private act, that it provides a lot of solace. And then there's what we're going to do here in Stockholm, which is equally joyous, which is connecting to other people. And those are the two gifts that writing has brought to me, is giving me a way to find out how I could live and make sense of the world. And then also eventually later, the company that I would keep, all kinds of writers.
Lovely.
Yeah.
So what would you say? Have poetry saved your lives too? Or what does it mean to you with poetry, creativity? It's a huge question, but we can start with poetry. What does that mean to you?
I don't know if I would say that it saved my life, but it has definitely led me all my life and made a path, both the writing itself and also authors that I've found and also gotten so much out of studying. And poetry, I think what I love about it is the simplicity and the act of deleting as much as you can from a text. Well, I just love that act of stripping down things to its core. And if you have that within you, I think you're drawn to poetry, which I am. So the most fulfilling act is always the editing, even though it's really heavy as well. But it's something that lasts when you take out the finest, what do you call that in English? Sandpapper. And just polish. And
the last polish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think just language is itself the act of traveling through time and to connect with people that lived hundreds of years ago and to be able to connect with souls on a deeper level somehow, because I think when you sit down and write, it's almost like you distill your soul or your being or your values or your thoughts into something that is so specific that you can almost touch and carry with you and learn by heart, as you said, Spencer. That's something that is so beautiful with words and poetry as well. That you can, whatever happens, if you end up in a prison, you have those words within you and will always have them with you until you leave this planet. And hopefully after that as well.
Well, I would say that your poems save lives because I use them a lot in my work as a therapist. And I know that they are very comforting, and I can use them when there's a person in crisis, and you can read this and there's so much comfort. So I would say that.
That's so beautiful.
What about you, Ralph?
You know, it's funny because you look back and I could say something like, poetry or creative writing in general saved my life. But you don't always know what you're up to until later. And so when I adopted a boy from foster care who was autistic and said to be, and there are quotes around this phrase, profoundly mentally retarded, I just happened to be in the habit of reading one poem aloud every day to my wife. Mm-hmm. And just did it. Especially, it was really useful when times where I didn't have a lot of time to write, but I still had musical language in the air in our house. And, you know, we'd been working to help our son be less anxious. He was really brutalized in foster care. And I remember one day reading Dylan Thomas's poem, Fern Hill, about his childhood years on this farm. And my son went to his computer, and the first words he ever typed were very great sound, very great sound. Mm. And it really, that's also the essence of poetry, too, that even beyond its semantic content, its musical organization is touching something. It's plucking some invisible strings inside your soul. And so really, he's helped me to see that something I've done for a long time really was sustaining. I knew it was much more than a hobby, but I didn't know that it really was saving lives in the way that some lives literally needed to be saved and many figuratively needed to be saved from, you know, whether it's just profound unhappiness, depression, but also a life that you might just accept. Without ever saying, I want the sound of music in how I connect with people. I want something mysterious. And also, you know, working with autistic youth as much as I have, there's a fantastic Indian American autistic writer who with just tremendous challenges with anxiety. And he really used iambic pentameter, the expectation of the next beat. So here's a perfect line of pentameter. It's not very interesting as a line of poetry, but the house across the street is made of glass. But what I discovered in working with this young man is that the expectation of this unstressed, stressed, unstressed, stressed, it allowed him to confront the next moment with some security because he knew that the words would be organized in a rhythmic way that soothed it was like he has an engine that of a car that idles too high, and he could relax more and anticipate the words are going to be different in this next metrical foot, but the foot's going to be the same. And suddenly you're really talking about the therapeutic aspects of rhythm. One other young man who became a really good friend of mine, he used a metronome and then even poetry itself to improve motor performance. And there are folks doing this with Parkinson's, right? So that it turns out that metrical poetry can literally calm tachycardia, like heart racing.
That's interesting.
I mean, it's super interesting when you think that if something like rhythmical words could be just as effective as some kind of beta blocker, that's already suggesting that the body and the mind could be much more integrated in ways that would allow the system, like a kind of homeostasis, to emerge.
But you read the poems to your son, to calm him down. How did you choose the poems? How did you know that this is the right poem? Because I guess not every poem works.
No, and I don't think I fully anticipated that reading some of my favorite poems, which have emerged from trauma stuff, that those aggravated my son. You know, it took him a long time to get comfortable with using the organizational aspects of poetry to both convey deep feeling that is very troubling, but also to control it, but also not to suppress it, but to give it a form that could both simultaneously give a stranger the experience you had, but also manage it for you, or at least better manage it for you. And that was a process of of trial and error. And also as he became much more he has 3 books of poems now. He's got a award-winning film. He has very different opinions too about kinds of poetry. And that's great, but we do ultimately, if I say to myself now, after living with him for 27 years, you're going to love this poem, he believes it. And he can say the same thing to me. And it might be mysterious. It might just be certain sound effects in the poem.
You told us a little bit about your work. So could you please tell us more? How do you work with, you said you're a teacher.
Yeah.
Do you use the creative writing as a part of that?
Oh, God, yes. I mean,
so how?
so, I was a professor, and that was very fulfilling. But I also ran these classes for autistic youth who'd had a very difficult time in the public schools. My wife worked with autistic kids. She knew the system. We leveraged astonishing cultural capital to maximize the chances that our son would be fully included in a regular classroom. And it worked. It was difficult. It worked. We had to, wear people down, all of their prejudices against, people with significant disabilities, especially non-speaking people who are thought not to have a brain, a mind, if you don't speak. But now my son and I teach these classes together online, people all over the world, and they love them. And here's the other thing. We don't charge. I wanted to carve out a space that was the space of the gift, because I think poetry had bestowed something on me for free that was, really crucial and mysterious. The Holy Spirit is not taking tickets. There's just something about whatever that force is that allows people to not be afraid of connecting really deeply. And I'm not particular about what words you want to use to describe that entity. And so you should see these classes, because my son is an excellent teacher. He's using the chat box on Zoom. I use my voice. We have prompts. We sign poems. He is wildly synesthetic himself. And so he loves poems that use the trope of synesthesia. Your voice is like velvet. There's an example of a simile that is synesthetic. And so many autistic folks, the incidence of synesthesia in autism is so much more common and often quite overwhelming, delightful, rich. But imagine if you walked into a room and the sound of somebody's voice was like gold flecks falling in the room at a rate that you found it really hard to pay attention to something that somebody wanted you to pay attention to. And the feedback has been astonishing, because they're also seeing a father-son pair using what my son calls his first language, which is poetry.
Wow, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Spencer, would you describe your work, and how do you use the poetry in your work? What place has the poetry?
Well, it hasn't been really. I mean, you mean my life as a priest?
Yeah.
So I've been a priest for, 15, 16 years now. And then before that, I was in retail. I sold clothes for about 12 years.
Okay.
And in that life, the poetry was just all subterranean. It's something I did at home and did not really talk about that much, because I didn't think the world was interested, which was not true. So then my life changed a lot around 41 when this book was published. And
because you have written a book.
Yeah, I wrote a book. It was called The Clerk's Tale.
Okay.
That was in 2003. It was selected by Louise Glick, who then went on to win the Nobel Prize here in Sweden. And it came about really unexpectedly. I had been rejected 300 times over 15 years. It was this long period of oblivion and silence and anonymity. And then suddenly everything changed. And I went from behind a sales clerk counter folding clothes to the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., like overnight in 1 week. And so that was an adjustment. But like I said at the very beginning of our time together, the two worlds now more than ever, I'm 62, are intersecting more than they ever have before. We started an author series at the church where I work, and we've had like 55 different authors come, sometimes novelists, nonfiction writers, and it's now been endowed by a family foundation. So I have the funds to bring people to give the readings. And they stay in the rectory where I live, and sometimes they give sermons at the church. So it kind of opens up the church to the idea of artists and their creativity and the connection between the church and the art world, which I think for many centuries now has been more separated. You know, they kind of started out together and then they got separated, and I feel called to single-handedly bring them back together again. So that's happening. And I become more seen in the world as my priesthood has gone along. And so in each place I've been, I started in an orphanage in San Pedro Sula, Honduras, in Central America, and we made a documentary film there, and it was empowering the girls to write poetry, girls that had no parents and had low self-esteem, and it was a gamble and a risk and kind of crazy, but it came out beautifully. And so then, you know, that was using poetry to help these girls. And we had a festival in Madrid and various things I've done. And now I do a lot of sermons. And so sometimes it doesn't directly, it's a whole different form, giving a sermon than writing a poem. But I suppose my poetic self comes out in those sermons in another way.
They do. I've heard you.
Yeah, they do.
They do. So, yeah, sermon giving is a whole... And I'm only really doing it now in this tiny little town that nobody has ever heard of in Rhode Island. I'm doing it like every single week. So it's affecting everything in a good way. Yeah.
I just want to say that movie, yes. It's and you can find it online because I've watched it. It's beautiful. It's called Beyond the Walls, right?
Voices Beyond the Wall.
Yeah.
12 love poems from the murder capital of the world. And the people that put it together were masterful.
Maybe we can have a link and put it in on Facebook, and so the listeners can see for themselves.
Yeah, and Ralph's got a documentary too that's so beautiful about his son, and that's something we have in common. But they're both masterpieces, I think, both of them in their own way, and they're both about poetry. So it's true.
So, how would you describe a creative life, Sofia? What is the creative life to you?
Well,
do you live a creative life? Would you say that?
Yes, I do. Nothing else than that. And I think that's honestly how it is. Because I don't have anything else like the two of you do. So I just live my life. It's extremely private, and I'm
happy you're here. You crawled out of the
my little cave. So I mean,
did you start like that, or did you have another life before, like Spencer had, like in the retail?
I used to work with creative women for 15 years.
In what way did you work?
Well, I helped them with their creativity, but I think, our lives, they are an artwork, all of it. And that's how I see it. And that's how I love living, with that view, because everything is an artwork. Your kitchen, your hair, everything. It can be an artwork. And I think that's also why I love slimming down, because I want to be able to connect to that creative part within me, and also to really value what I have in my life. And I guess I'm quite sensitive, because the less I have in my life, the better I feel. And it goes on. I don't know where it's going to end. Can it be even?
Are you throwing everything out now?
I mean, I always have the longing to simplify and purify and
the simplicity.
Yeah, I always do. I mean, I think it has to do with, well, values, I guess. Freedom and creativity, because usually I think it's the less I have on my plate, the more creative I am and feel, and the more I can block out the world in different ways, the closer I can get to the heart, where I believe is where the creativity lives.
I think you're very inspiring in that way, because I also think about my life like that now. What can I take away? What is absolutely necessary for me to have and what is not? So I'm starting to walk around the house and looking for stuff like, do I need this? And now,
you don't.
No. Now we're talking about moving when our children are grown up and moving out. And I'm like, that's not much that will be left when I move out, because I don't need a lot of stuff. So I'm going to
bring your body, your body and a little bag.
Yeah.
And you're all set.
Yeah. And then my creative life will get boosted, I would say. I think everyone is creative in some way. It's just that we are not really aware of it. But I think every person needs to be creative in some way, whatever.
Yeah, and I think creativity is so much bigger than that as well. It's not only about creating something. It's about being. It's a way of being, and a way of just being a human being is being creative. That's our core, I think.
That's true.
And I think everyone has a creative outlet, one way or the other, but maybe it doesn't look like the typical creative life, which is like writing or cooking or And I mean, of course, some people are more creative than others, but I think that everyone is creative. And I think, I don't know, but I think, maybe I'm wrong, but maybe people long to be more creative, but maybe we don't know, because we are so flooded with everything. So it's so easy to let that part of us go and just spend time on the surface instead of finding deeper layers within ourselves.
What do you say to this?
It's
do you agree or do you disagree?
I used to think of writing as stealing time from a busy life. So it wasn't central, because I had a million things to do. Like, I was raising a son, I was doing this, I was doing that. And then when the pandemic hit and people started dying in my mother's facility, 28 of 29, she was the one that didn't die on her hall. And I engaged in magical thinking that said, if I wrote a poem every day, that would allow her to live another day. And I knew it was magical thinking, but I was separated. She was in Boston, I was in Iowa, and you couldn't really travel. And I would post them on Facebook. And what I loved about this was, initially all of my professional writer friends thought this was tacky, and got private messages saying, you're too good for this. Don't. I was like, no. Maybe I publish these, maybe I don't. But could I write a poem every day? Not could I write a good poem? Would I place it someplace fantastic? And would this somehow improve the quality of my CV? This was about, could I keep my mother alive? Pure magical thinking. And I'd never done this. I hadn't come close to doing this. I would have spasms of creativity. There was no, yes, my wife would say the way I set a table, the way I decorate. Yeah. So I'm not saying there wasn't creative expression, but as writing. And that really taught me that I don't care about my career anymore. Like, I'm not, am I happy when I place an essay? Yeah. But really, I'm addicted to this experience of regular writing. And I've now arranged my life so that I will do a little bit of writing every single day.
Okay.
And that
Even Sundays?
Even it doesn't matter.
In the morning or in the evening?
It's in the morning. But by the evening, I'm not sure I could spell my name at 9 o'clock at night. But in the early morning hours before the emails come in, and I realized that 99.9% of the work of all living writers will be absolutely forgotten. What am I doing this for? Do I love Like, it can no longer be tied in the urgency of my mother's need. And then I realized I'd somehow given myself a gift. I thought this was for her. And I'm trying to continue to live that out. Even to the extent when I was one of my hospitalizations, I didn't have my computer, had to go very quickly because I was in trouble. And so I wrote jokes. And I wrote jokes that were inappropriate for Iowa, where I live, where the people are strictly sincere. And I thought that's creativity. Here I am. I have a roommate. He's in his late 70s, and I was cracking him up. He thought this was really funny. And they came in and they thought, had I smuggled alcohol into the house? No, this man was laughing and I was laughing. Two older guys in a hospital room, and they did not know how to process it.
I love that.
A little community had formed, and it's hard to write jokes, a lot harder than to write poems.
I could never do that.
You actually could.
No,
because,
I couldn't.
You know why you could? Because I didn't think I could do it either. Mine are all like gallows humor, but I think they're very, very funny. I mean, I could tell you one, but
so you laugh at your own.
It gives.
That's a good.
I mean, like let's say you're having really serious medical challenges, there are personalities that will use gallows humor you're not just making light of it, you're actually refusing to repress, what might be grim.
What about you, Spencer? When do you write?
What is the question again?
When
I think
do
we
you
started
write?
out at the creative life, and so
I'm just curious because you have quite a lot of other things going on. So do you like writing?
When do I write my own things?
Yeah.
Really, really early in the morning if I can. The most recent development in my creative life. Well, I think of two things when I think of this. First, we were just, as a church, we went to Honduras. We went to the orphanage and we engaged with the 72 girls that are there making butterflies. And then we cut them out and we add antennae and we color them and they write their names on them. And then we write our names on them. And then we cross-pollinate. And then these butterflies hang on fishing wire from inside the church. So the church is just full of all the art of the girls when people look up. And now there's like 100 of them now because we keep going back and forth. So that's one thing. And then in my own writing life, I'm going to have another book of poetry come out in 2028, which is a surprise. And so when working on those has been early in the morning. And I was going to wait like 10 years. And then my mother died. My mother just died in January.
Sorry.
And I'm sorry too. And so she died on January 17th at 1 a.m. I got when you get a call at 1 a.m, it's usually on one kind of call you get at 1 a.m. So I got the call and I knew she was failing and I was on my way down there like the next day and she had died. And I wrote her obituary, and then at like 4 a.m, I had a voice come to me. Now you're going to think I'm crazy. And the voice said, send the book now. Send it now. My mother was an extremely strong woman. And so I thought she's telling me this. So I just did it. I wrote my editor in New York and I said, normally I would wait 5 or 6 more years, but this voice has come to me and he knew my mother. I said, she died this morning. And so by the end of the week, he had accepted the book that I sent. So I'm busily working on that whenever I can. And often when I travel, it comes to me. So I got a whole bunch of edits in England in a car on my way to the Salisbury Cathedral, writing, thinking. And there's 17 poems, and there's one for each day that she was alive in January. So I'm excited about it. So I kind of do it. It's always going on. In my case, I was just, born this way. Like it's like I walk like a poet, I talk like one, I eat like one, I sleep like one. So it's always kind of going on. But it's so invisible as an art form that I don't think most people see it. But it's always going on.
I know you talked about that too, like researching for writing. Even that part of the writing is not writing, but that you have to collect to begin. What do you need to collect?
Well, I think that's something has to find you. Something has to touch you, and there has to be like a longing or a little drive towards something. Yeah. Like you said, Ralph, that usually you just see afterwards what you wrote and what happened in your life and why you did things. So I think it's the same with the writing. You need time to, well, first of all, I think you need time to close down your former writing project. That it takes some time to let it go inside. And then I need some space, some freedom, move around physically because you've been sitting down so much. And geographically also, like you said, Spencer, I think a lot of things happen when you leave your home environment. It doesn't have to be that far, but when you just shift something. And when you shift something inside you can shift also. And then suddenly you have that idea and something that you want to work on again.
So it comes to you when the right time is.
I mean, I'm a planner, but the plans never work out like the plans want to. But I try to plan, but something else comes up usually. And my new writing project, I just published a book. Is it a month ago only? It feels like it's so old and like years.
You've left it.
Yes. I always do. The same day I send it to the printer, it's gone for me. It's so uninteresting because it's dead.
Okay.
Because, I can't do anything more with it. And that's the interesting part with the writing.
Do you read your own poems afterwards? Do you go back to your books and read the poems?
Only if I'm out like this.
Okay. Never asked to do it.
Yeah.
You don't sit at home reading?
No.
No, you don't. Okay.
No.
Why?
Why? No, because that's, like I said, it's dead. Dead materia. You can't do anything with it. Of course you can, because you can start working on it again, but that's not interesting.
Do you have anything to add about the creativity?
Yes, I do. Please. One thing I've also discovered, I think, is that often in writing, now that I'm older, I can see, like, usually it begins, the ego is strong, or it will say, I'm going to write about this, or it's going to be about this. But really, it's very mysterious. And really, for me, I know that it's only, if I'm lucky enough, the thing, with me it's a poem, will begin to say what it's going to be. And then it's just a complete surprise, because it's not, it's kind of magical. And there's no telling. I don't know how it happens. It's a lot of work, and I love doing it, but it's also very mysterious to see it. The older I get, I think that God just gave me this gift, and I can't explain it. And it just came, it was just part of how I was going to come into the world. And my job was to be responsible for it and to take care of it and take care of myself so that I could do it. And it's taken up a lot of my life, which is not a complaint, but it's been very clear that that's what I was meant to do. And it's mysterious. And it's really going well when it's not what I thought it was going to be. Yeah, every single time.
Interesting.
Who came first, the priest or the poet within you? Who moved in first?
I don't know. Like, when I was born, I was a really huge baby. Like, I was really, really big, and the only baby that came out of my mother. My mother was a small person, and she had this giant baby, and she put the baby on a bed, and then my grandmother apparently looked at this giant baby that had come out of this small woman and said, I think this child will be a priest. Like, when I was just like, because I was very like calm and not a screaming baby, and large, and based on this largeness,
large,
and
friars,
and this quietness, she said that.
So
but
the
I think
priest
the
came.
writing, I think the poetry stuff really was the gateway to my life.
Just think it's so interesting thinking about what themes has been in your life, your whole life, since you were almost like newborn.
Yeah.
Because there are themes like values or things you've been drawn to all your life.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a side note.
Yeah.
But what you were saying about surprise, there's that famous line by the American poet Robert Frost, who said, no surprise for the reader. I mean, no surprise for the writer, no surprise for the reader.
Yeah.
And this is your point too, Sofia, that you get to a certain point in working over something that the surprising elements, even if, you were revising something for 5 years or whatever it is, it now feels like it's done. And that's what the thrill is. And one of the things, I've been reading a lot about the surrealists and how they had formulas and techniques for being creative. And I try to be reading at least three kinds of things that are so radically different. So let me give you an example. So, I played a lot of high-level tennis in my youth and even up into my 30s, very high-level tennis. But I was also reading neuroscience. I was a fellow at the Brain Institute at Duke. And there was a guy named Adrian Owen, a Brit, who had a hunch that people described as being in a vegetative state, that at least some of them might be more responsive, or it might be tracking what loved ones or doctors are saying in the room. And he developed this technique using fMRI to create a primitive language, because there's no clinical bedside examination suggests these people are in a vegetative state. So he decided that because the signatures on fMRI are pretty distinct, that yes would be visualizing hitting a tennis ball for 30 seconds. And no would be walking through your house. And they really do have pretty clean signatures. And the person would have to make this image in their head for 30 seconds for you to have confidence that they were intentionally trying to, and this is hard, like to think tennis, forehand. Turns out about 20% of these people misdiagnosed as in a vegetative state were there, but unable in any way to reach you or for them to, difficulties in both directions, but that through this imaging, that 20% of these people had demonstrated that they were conscious in some form, right? So how would you do this? The current president of the United States is Barack Obama. Home. Because he's not. Like, he's not the current. And then as long as it was a yes/no question with an answer, these folks were demonstrating. So obviously that neuroscience is loaded for me as somebody who adopted a kid that was described as unreachable, as profoundly mentally retarded. So I'm reading this, I'm reading some poetry, I'm reading something about planetary objects that are not planets, that are not meteors. They have all this terminology. And suddenly in the brain, things start to cook. There's no connection between reading about Stefan Edberg, a great Swedish tennis player, very elegant, probably the best volleys of anybody in the history of the game. And I'm making connections. And I'm making connections across things. So if I can enhance the likelihood of something interesting happening by reading very strange things simultaneously. Like right now with my son, we're almost through Brothers Karamazov.
Oh, wow.
Just extraordinary as a novel, but really extraordinary when you're reading a cookbook, Sicilian cookbook next to it. It's just because suddenly there are recipes with the names of priests and monks and monasteries, and you're like, wow. Like the spirit is food. It's already starting the process of making metaphors. You don't almost have to come up with them on your own. So the techniques have helped me get something interesting out much more quickly than I used to be able to.
Reading, yeah.
Sophia, you were about to say something?
Yeah, I think it shows in your writing. What you describe now, I can see. Don't you think, Spencer?
I do.
Yeah,
I do.
It's like really clear objects, and it's like contrasting things. Yeah. It's so interesting how different you are when it comes to the whole creative process, and how you find spiritual food to your inner world, because that's what it is.
And you know, it's a different. I was talking about these planetary, but I literally have this feeling of a solar system of some kind, not like our own. And where do the objects need to be, and how they move in relation to one another? And that's when I got that working, that's when I know the piece is on its way. It's funny. A reviewer of a recent book said, well, let me back up. There was a review of Herman Melville's novel, my favorite American author, Pierre. And this is what the reviewer said: his mind runs riot in remote analogies. Like the strangest comparisons. I love that because metaphor is a paradox. It has to be apt yet surprising. If it's too apt, it's a cliche. If it's too surprising, people say that's preposterous. But maybe you can start with the preposterous and win over the reader, where they go 3 paragraphs later, oh my God, there is some hidden logic. Because I think that's the logic of the soul. It's not an obvious comparison. It's connecting things, as the modernists said, only connect, pound. That's crucial.
Would you like to add something to this? I think it's very interesting.
Yeah. Well, I just think about our inner worlds. I think maybe some of us, maybe I, have really large inner worlds. That's where I live. It feels like that's where life is, don't you think?
It's very important. I'd like to be there more, though. Not in your inner world, but in
it's a really good world.
I know.
I think, to go back to the question that you asked me, but it connects to this also, is that I think I started with a really elaborate inner world and fantasy world as a kid, and making maps and imaginary countries, and really the poetry was a place where I could just hide out and survive. But as my life has gone on, the world of a priest, as it has visited me, has brought me more. Immediately I was in Honduras, and I was with 72 abandoned and abused girls who were going through puberty. Like immediately I was like with a lot of people. And then each place, it's like I'm more and more in the world, and now in a new way in Rhode Island with a whole community of being with them, at the time of birth and marriage. I'm about to do a wedding, and then and I don't think I could have done it younger. I couldn't do the role of a priest younger, because it requires a certain kind of life experience to talk to people about getting married, and then what do I know about getting married? But to be there with them is really sacred, and so I needed the poetry to get me to be a priest. I think I needed the interior world before I could have the exterior world.
What made you choose to become a priest? And
I don't know. It's like a mystery. It's like a poem, really. I did not come from a religious family, particularly at all. I got sober in a 12-step program 40 years ago. in England and then stayed sober. And I was brought into that program through the murder of my cousin, who was my same age and was also drinking heavily. We were great drinkers. And when I was with Ralph at Wesleyan, a lot of my life in university was kind of a disaster because I was really drinking and I couldn't stop. And I was thinking that my life was just going to be like that, the whole thing. And then John died right when I was graduating from Wesleyan. And about a year later, I was in England and I went to these 12-step meetings, and that began like a spiritual search. There's got to be more meaning to life, especially when somebody you love dies in such a meaningless way. So it triggered a search. And then when we both studied with this amazing writer named Annie Dillard at the university where we went, Wesleyan, and one of the things that she told me that I remember through my drunken haze was, if you're going to be a writer, Spencer, and I hope you will, I think she said, which was a very kind thing for her to say to me because I don't think I was producing anything good at all, but I had a desire. She said, study something else. If you want to be a writer, study something else. So that turned into religion and theology. And then I started absorbing this poet, George Herbert, who was British from 300 years ago, who was a priest. And I wanted to be like him. And I was just in his chapel celebrating him in England. It was one of the highlights of my whole life last week, was being in this tiny little chapel about the size of the studio where he was a priest for 3 years before he died. And so that was part of it too. I wanted to be like him, but really it was the sobriety that, that I was given a second chance at life. And part of that was a spiritual connection. And then here we are.
I think I would like to turn to another question that is, what is a meaningful life for you?
I think an earlier version of me would say that one has to have some commitment to a greater good. But the danger of that kind of language is it actually maybe occludes deep affective ties. So one way to describe why I would adopt a non-speaking 6-year-old boy with autism who'd been badly abused is that I felt as an incredibly privileged person that I could give back in this way. And I don't think that's untrue. But I don't think that's how, and I wrote a book about this and maybe even said that exactly like that. But I don't think that fully explains the great mystery of connections. Because my son increasingly says that he adopted me. And that is true insofar as he was ahead of me. He might have been very young, and I might have been in my 30s, but he was ahead of me. I mean, this is what's so interesting about I really think in a visuospatial way. So he was ahead of me, even though he was much younger, right, than I. So I do think, though, that one can bring together explicit, rational narratives that you use to describe where you invest your energy. I don't think they're worthless or meaningless, but I do think the closer that description can get to the great mystery of how you respond to other people, that suddenly you're responding to the needs of somebody else. But really the great surprise is my son saved my life, not me saving his life. Obviously I did on some level, but what's so strange about being human is it takes you a long time to realize why you did something. Like it takes forever, the whole rest of your life. And that will always change as you keep getting older and things change, you get sick, whatever, you then have another sense of that. So I think that's important. I think, I don't know, rectifying, that's the wrong word, but how can you foster the growth of other people, whether as a teacher or your kids? I don't understand my friends who are disappointed that their kids didn't decide to do something with their lives. I'm like, this is weird because you're not them, And so how do you do that, whether that's as a teacher or as a parent? I think it's really hard, especially if they're making what seem to you to be questionable choices. But that's part of it, writing, giving back. I really can't stand writers for whom the whole project has become something about them. And what are they doing? Even if they write really, 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 really well, what are they doing? What's it about?
Do you want to respond to this? Or just start a new thread?
Well, I think that a meaningful life is lived cliche one day at a time, because you never know what's going to happen. And things change all the time. And like you said, I think most of our lives, we don't know. We don't know why we do things. We think we do, but we don't. And there are so many layers and so many horizons that you will probably never find or see, maybe when you leave this planet. But I think, like you said also, that I can never know, even though if I spent my whole life with you, I still can't put myself in you. We will always be separate people, and our way of living and the thing that moves you forward is always going to be different and change all the time. And I think that's a thing, to follow the thing, whatever you want to call it, that moves you forward every day. To just take the steps that maybe doesn't seem logic, but they are true. And you can't explain it at all. But
So what makes you move forward today?
Well, just being here with you is a movement, because my soul is so happy having you here. So it's just
likewise.
Yeah. And I think also what we talked about, moving geographically, even though I just moved, I moved myself a tiny little bit on Earth to get here to your studio, to another city. I still feel that when I leave my bed and my home environment. So that's also something that gives me new perspectives and new horizons. And there are tiny little things. And that's also so fascinating with texts, like we talked about before, because you can read something when you're out in the city, just reading a sign or hear someone say something, and something just clicks, and it's something shifts, and you just know something new. And I love that. And that's why I also love the simplicity of living, because I feel like I get closed down or like bogged down, or when there are too many tabs open in my in my life. So if I can close them down, I can be open to the next step that something wants me to take.
Lovely. What about you, Spencer? What is a meaningful life, or what is meaning in your life?
I would echo what everybody is saying now. What crossed my mind was right after my mom died, I had a little time off in New York. I came back and I gave this sermon on starlings and murmurations. That's an unusual word for you, murmurations.
Yeah.
So starlings.
You can see that. You can tell from my face.
I'll explain. So starlings move in patterns, and one of the largest ones is over Denmark. There were thousands and thousands of starlings, and the scientists don't know why they do it.
Okay.
But they rise up and they make these patterns in the sky. It's not photoshopped. It's not AI. They make patterns, these beautiful patterns in the sky, and they don't know why they do it. And there's also no leader. It's not like one starling leading them all. They can only look like to the right and to the left, like 5 out and 5 to the other direction. And then they all start moving and making these patterns. And as my mom went into the ether, there were these strange occurrences happening afterwards. And I felt like she was in some kind of huge memoration. And also recently in the church where I am, where we've all been working as a team to resurrect a church that was in a great deal of trouble and sort of bring it back to life. And after like 4 years of a lot of work, it seems to be happening. And just recently, I don't know if it was that sermon or maybe I wasn't giving a sermon. I was just looking out at all the people. There was like a happiness that I kind of couldn't describe. And to be a witness to people that had been sad, but now they seem like they're sort of happy. They're happy to be in there. They're happy to talk about creativity. They're happy to make a butterfly. To be a witness to that, to me, is the meaning of life. To see that kind of love spread. The meaning of life is love. Is love, but love in a radical way, not just romantic love, but a radical love, which means radical, which means everybody, even the people that are annoying, really, especially. Yeah. And that kind of love, I think, is the meaning of life. And like Ralph said, at this time in our lives, or my life, the sharing to give back is the most rewarding. It's not so interesting. I mean, here we are talking about ourselves, but it's not so interesting as it is kind of being here to share is really the most exciting, because then you can start to see that happiness that I'm talking about. And then you murmurate. And
I would say connection, because you started out at the retreat in Spain. And I think connection is also a word that I like, that we are connected in this room right now and all the time in different connections. And I've learned that every time I start to chase for the meaning or the purpose, I won't find it. Yeah. It's like when I'm out chasing, I only get tired. But if I sit still and let it come, or just think about, or being in the inner world, as you said, then it emerges, I think, for me.
It's funny because, my son sends me an email every day, like even if he's on the second floor and I'm on the first, and he often says some version of, how are you loving yourself today? I mean, he's figured out that I'm much better at like this project of loving him, of loving other people. And there was a strange way in which here's this foster kid who was abandoned by his parents, brutalized, and somehow he's done the work of loving himself in this radical way you're talking about, which has allowed him, he's in a force of connection. If you see him do one of his Zoom things, there are all of these people and it's not like, oh, they love him. It's that he's created, I have some friends like this. You're very good at this, like connecting people. And then suddenly they feel like, oh my God, they've got 10 new radical like friends, and they would never have met one another, right? But there's also the business of, how do you rethink your own relationship to yourself and your emergent self? Because the self is always emergent. It's not fixed. Even if you tell yourself it's fixed. Well, something happens next week, and there are surprises, both good and bad. And I think that's part of, like, there's some strange murmuration, and like your starlings need to do things. They're flying so fast in relation to one another. How do you do that and make this beautiful shape in the sky? I think you gotta be doing some work on yourself. Like, my left wing needs to tilt a little bit here if I'm not going to hit that starling in front of me or right next to me.
I love that radical love. Well, I will bring that with me today and tomorrow and every day, I think. So I have this last question for you, and I would ask you, what gives you hope?
So I just came back from Honduras and this orphanage where I'm very involved, and hope is seeing a girl left on the street corner, no parents, malnourished, bloated stomach, no teeth in her head, coming into the home of Nuestras Pequeñas Rosas and being there with us and seeing her come forward to receive Holy Communion after several months, and she's walking, because when she came, she couldn't walk. And to see a little girl have self-esteem, to like herself, that gives me a lot of hope for the world. Oh, that can happen. That a girl can go from, in Honduras, they're called rechazadas, which means throwaway kids, just like something to be thrown away, and to be alive and happy and laughing and playing and have whole lives. I'll close with this. So when I was working in Madrid, the founder of the orphanage came to visit me, and one of the girls who had grown up ran a hair salon in Murcia, which is in the south, and she came up to have dinner with us at a very elegant restaurant with silverware and candles, and she got up to go to the bathroom sometime during this meal, and the founder of the orphanage said to me, she said, "Isn't it amazing that Teresa is here with us?" She said, when she came to the home, she was locked in a tool shed, and she didn't know how to eat at a table. She didn't know how to hold silverware. And here she is now. Look at her. Isn't that amazing? Just a hairstylist in Murcia, but she has a whole life. So that gives me hope.
Wow, that's I think this is one of the things that's really allowed us to reconnect, is that sense of, yes, there's a lot of violence in the world, in America right now, current leaders. There's just a lot of despair, but it's also produced, as it can, people coming together and trying to do things. And I think about that with my son. It's just unbelievable. And you don't set out to say, my son is going to be this. You love that person. And what I've described to people is, no. I did what you did with your child. You imagined a future for your child. And I have now imagined a future for my son. And yes, the particulars of that are different. And in doing that, someone else is imagining a future for you that is radically larger than what you might have imagined. But I think Spencer's more hopeful than I am naturally, or I can get pretty dark about, because when I was a foster dad, just seeing what people did to kids and the so-called throwaways and stuff.
That's terrible.
It really is unbelievable. I could tell you stories that you'd lie down on the floor and you wouldn't be able to say anything for a month. But look at what is possible. And if that, like, people like to say, oh God, your life is so hard. You have your son, he's significantly disabled. It's like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding? You have this completely backwards. And look what's possible. Look what's possible with a lot of work, sure. But why would you imagine anything grand would come without work? That's what I would ask people.
And I would echo that as well. I think staying close to suffering in one way or the other, your own or preferably someone else's, makes me hopeful. Because, like you said, you have to go through hard things to grow. And we talked about radical love, and there is radical hope. And I think for me, it's easy to feel hopeful, even though I see the world, I read the news daily. But that's not the truth. That's not what we should focus our eyes on. Because there is so much more hope in the world than we think. There is hope exactly everywhere, in every person, every street corner. And I think also words are important, what we speak life to, and how we choose to direct our steps and our worlds, because it's totally easy to get dragged down if you want to. But like you said, why? And why not work hard on something that is for the hope, for building hope?
Yes. And words, I think, especially to just round out this whole thing, are, I don't know if it's the most powerful way to deliver hope, but, I just finished this biography of Winston Churchill, who through his speeches, saved a country and then saved the world. And of all those people listening to those speeches, there was little Anne Frank, in Amsterdam, inspired by his speeches that it was going to be all right. So it's just so powerful.
And just someone saying to you, it's going to be all right. You'll be fine. Just that calms you. And it's so easy to give to someone else also. And not in a pinky, but because it's the truth. Everything will be all right at the end. That's what I believe.
Yeah.
We had another Swedish priest here for another conversation. We talked about hope, and she said for her, it's a discipline. It's like she chose this discipline of hope, to not to lose hope, but to focus. And it's sometimes hard work and you have to focus, but she chose to see the hope. So I think that's beautiful too.
And there's so many people who want to tell you that child is hopeless. They're too damaged. I'm using scare quotes around that term. And it's not that you're naive. It's just that you think other people have wildly underestimated what is possible.
Yeah, and I thought about when you said before the magical thinking with your poems to your mum.
Yeah.
I mean, magical thinking, that's the most beautiful thing in the world.
Yeah. And without it, you're going to unwittingly set the bar too low for what is possible.
Yeah.
And all the while, you're also you're forgetting what is possible for you in this act of, reaching for the sky. Murmurations.
I can also relate to you with your son, because I have a daughter that has some challenges. I wouldn't go into it now because I'm not sure she wants to, but I have to support her, not on a daily basis, but very often. But when I can see that she can change from being depressed and sad and not believing in herself to being to get this self-esteem that I am good at something. And she just did it. So yesterday she was successful in a way. And the day before she was very low and she said, I can't do this and it's a disaster and so on. So that gives me hope that she can turn from this low point and then change into a good feeling about herself that I can do this. So
and discovering as a parent, maximizing the chances of you're the kind of encouragement that will allow because I do think there's a lot of translational work, like what would encourage me would be very different from what would encourage my son. And I think this is also related to teaching or being a priest, talking to people who really need, a kind word. But there are many forms of kindness. And that is humbling too, which I think is crucially
I think
important.
me and my daughter's best tool is humor, sense of humor.
Yeah.
I make her laugh, and then everything goes a bit. Not all of it goes away, but like making her laugh.
Yeah.
And that works well for her. Not always, not every day, but most of the time. I am so happy that we can have this conversation here today. We are about to wrap it up, but I would like to say a warm thank you to all of you for coming here and to take part of this.
Thank you.
It's so beautiful to hear you, and I would just say much radical love to all of you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Och till er som lyssnar, jag hoppas att ni har förstått mestadels av det vi har pratat om på engelska. Vi kommer att dela en del länkar kring Ralph och Spencers böcker och även Sofias böcker. Och är det någonting ni undrar över eller någonting som ni i vanlig ordning protesterar emot, så snälla gå in i våra sociala medier. Det är både Facebook och Instagram som vi finns. Där kan ni gärna dela med er. Och fridens liljor.